Thank you for joining us today. Later this afternoon, I will be introducing Bill 50, the 2025 Municipal Affairs Statutes Amendment Act, a bill that is about modernizing municipal processes. Last spring, in 2024, we introduced legislation under the same name, which implemented a number of important changes to the way we hold local elections in Alberta, to the rules governing locally elected officials, and to accelerate housing development in Alberta. Since then, our government has been listening to feedback from our municipal, business, and community partners. Bill 50 represents some next steps in making local elections more accessible, in making municipal councils more functional, and in enhancing protections for Albertans and Alberta families who are interested in buying new homes. The first set of changes in Bill 50 centers on the Local Authorities Election Act. Last year, we prohibited the use of automatic voting machines, including electronic tabulators, so that Albertans across the province could have greater confidence in the methods and results of local elections. However, we realized Albertans with visual or physical impairments deserve to be able to vote independently and privately using technology that preserves the integrity of Alberta elections and Albertans' faith in election results. So Bill 50 will allow Albertans to use elector assistance terminals in local elections. These devices are specialized terminals that voters with impairments, visual impairments, and sometimes others, can use to mark their ballots privately and independently, just like everybody else. Using these terminals still results in a traditional paper ballot that gets counted by hand as required by Alberta law. So this change upholds Alberta's direction on automated voting technology while making sure voters with disabilities can cast a ballot with dignity and confidence. In last year's bill, we also enabled local political parties for upcoming municipal elections in Edmonton and Calgary. Some of the changes we're proposing today are intended to fine-tune the rules governing these new local parties. Bill 50 will allow local political parties to transfer funds among their endorsed candidates, mirroring how provincial parties operate. Just as provincial parties can allocate resources to where they're needed, most local parties will be able to support their team of candidates in a coordinated way. To further transparency, we are requiring local political parties to disclose their donation information in September 2025 before the October election. This means if voters want to have a better understanding of the donors who support different candidates and parties, they can look into it well in advance of the election. I would just say plainly, this was an oversight in the initial draft of the legislation. We heard about it from municipalities. We heard about it from Albertans, and they were right. So we're going to fix it in the regulations following this legislation. As you may recall, the amendments set forth in Bill 20 last year require parties to disclose annually in March. All existing donation limits and transparency rules will still apply, and some additional regulatory requirements are in the works to establish the financial reporting rules for local political parties and fines for exceeding campaign expense limits. We're also making a series of administrative fixes to the Local Authorities Election Act to help elections run smoothly, like clarifying the procedures around recounts and simplifying the process for candidates who wish to withdraw. All these tweaks add up to elections that are easier to run and easier to understand. When the rules are clear and consistent, candidates and voters alike can have greater confidence in the process. We also have a meaningful amendment for the municipality of Jasper. As I explained in a formal statement in early February, due to last summer's wildfires, many displaced residents who call Jasper home are at risk of losing their eligibility to vote in Jasper's municipal election or even run for council because they won't physically be living in the municipality on election day. So we want to make sure that they are recognized as residing there. Albertans should not lose their democratic right due to such an extraordinary circumstance. And Bill 50 just simply addresses what I think we all can agree is fairness. People who were eligible to vote or run for office in Jasper right before the wildfire and intend to return to the community once they are able to will remain fully eligible to vote and or run in Jasper's next municipal election. This is a commitment our government made to the people of Jasper, and we are following through. I will shift now to the Municipal Government Act. We have heard loud and clear that certain rules of the MGA have led to unintended consequences and dysfunction in some municipalities. As it currently stands, the MGA requires every municipality to pass a code of conduct bylaw for council members with the idea of setting standards for respectful behavior and remedies when those rules are violated. Unfortunately, in some cases, we've seen these codes become weaponized amongst council members. Instead of promoting harmony, codes of conduct have sometimes been used by council members to harass or sideline their colleagues over political disagreements. Council code of conduct, when misused or abused, can create a chilling effect on legitimate debate and discussion of important issues, and they can be used to silence dissent on council. What's more, there have been some instances where the courts have actually overturned council sanctions, finding them to be unreasonable or disproportionate, or based on a lack of procedural fairness. Most importantly, this type of dysfunction can result in council members losing track of the job they've been elected to do, which is, of course, serving Albertans. If passed, Bill 50 will remove the MGA requirement for every municipal council to have a code of conduct bylaw. Councils will no longer be permitted to have a code of bylaw for codes of conduct between council members. This does not mean councils will have free rein to misbehave. Absolutely not. It means we need a better, more impartial system to deal with conduct issues, one that can't be misused for political gain or personal rivalry. That's why going forward, Municipal Affairs will be working in partnership with municipalities to develop a new approach to councillor conduct and accountability. And we will look at what's best to introduce or not introduce or change in consultation and partnership with municipalities. So we want to ensure every council follows consistent procedures also for meetings in key areas, essentially a standard set of rules of order and conduct that applies province-wide. The primary focus of these standard procedures will be how to handle conflicts that arise within council meetings to ensure the effective conduct of council business. Second, we will explore creating an independent ethics commissioner for municipalities, something they have asked for. Which would be an impartial official or body that could handle serious complaints about councillor behavior when those things arise. The idea is that if council member is really acting egregiously, the situation can be invested by a neutral party outside of local politics and dealt with through sanctions or recommendations that are consistent across the province. Because when a local council falls into chaos, it's the residents who suffer as projects install and trusty roads. By eliminating the flawed code of conduct system now, we prevent further misuse while we work on better solutions. And let's face it, one of the things that municipalities asked us to fix is currently a lot of council code of conduct bylaws have to be sorted out by the CAO. Then the poor CAO depends upon council to keep their job. It's just not fair to have that person forced to referee things amongst their bosses. So I think it's an obvious area of unfairness. Municipalities asked for this change. I think it will be well received, but you'll all hear from municipalities and they'll all have their own opinions. We need council chambers to focus on the real issues, the budget, the infrastructure projects, the community programs, the services the residents deserve. The residents don't really require the interpersonal drama from members of council. So another change we are making to the MGA tackles the process for intermunicipal collaboration frameworks, or ICFs. Alberta has hundreds of municipalities, and where they border each other, they need to cooperate on services for the residents. ICFs are meant to formalize cooperation and cost sharing between neighboring municipalities, and in many cases, these agreements have worked perfectly well. But that's the majority of cases. There's also other cases, and we've heard feedback where the rules need to be more clear and more fair, so we are proposing some changes, again, as requested by municipalities. We're making it a requirement that each ICF must address a mandatory list of core intermunicipal services. In the past, municipalities could, in theory, gloss over some services or argue about what to include in their agreements. The changes we're proposing will create a checklist of key services that must be discussed and planned for in every ICF. The areas are emergency response, water and wastewater, solid waste, recreation facilities, and transportation. These are basic services that very, very often cross municipal borders. Second, we're limiting new capital cost obligations to only those projects where both parties have had some say in the decision to build the facility and the decisions around the facility's design. To be clear, we want municipalities cooperating. But what needs to change is there are some circumstances where two municipalities next to each other, one could build a facility close to the border and then force the other municipality under the current rules to pay for a percentage of it without them agreeing that the facility was needed at all. So we are going to require, before that happens, for both municipalities to agree that that facility is required and to agree to cost share. So they'll need to communicate and co-plan if they want to cost share, which is really what the spirit of the ICFs are intended to be. And third, we will allow adjacent municipal districts, that's rural municipalities, to opt out of ICFs by mutual agreement. There's particularly some rural municipalities in not highly populated areas where on their border there's not a lot to talk about. And if there's mutual agreement that they can live without an ICF, as long as they both pass a council motion that says they agree on that, then we're not going to make them do it if there's no point. So not every pair of neighbors needs a detailed framework and that lasts in perpetuity, and we're going to allow for that to happen. So under the new rules, like I said, if they both want to withdraw or not have an ICF, they can. It cuts some red tape and provides some flexibility, which I think will be welcomed by several municipalities in Alberta. We're also making some tweaks to strengthen the rules of arbitrators to resolve disputes about ICFs more efficiently when they do come up. Stronger collaboration frameworks mean municipalities can share the cost of infrastructure in a way that's fair and planned, which helps speed up development, smooths the path for projects to go forward. Ultimately, it's about making sure local governments spend less time in disagreement and more time serving Albertans, building the roads, fire halls, and homes that are growing our population needs. Which brings me to last major piece of Bill 50, protecting home buyers and ensuring homes are built well and people who buy those homes are protected. After all, it's not enough to get more houses built faster, which is a big priority, but speed can't come at the expense of quality, and home builders deserve to have confidence that their investments are being protected. We're making key updates to the new Home Buyer Protection Act to strengthen consumer protections while cutting red tape where it makes sense, because rules should protect homeowners, not create unnecessary hurdles. Take owner builders, for example. Very important segment of the market, particularly in some of the rural and more remote areas of Alberta where large builders don't often ply their trade. Many Albertans, especially in rural areas, choose to build their own homes. We are proposing to make this process more simple. No more notarized statutory declarations that bog down approvals, just a digital confirmation. And for those who find themselves needing to sell their home before the 10-year warranty period is up, we're making it easy to qualify for an exemption and more responsive to real-life situations, even as we make sure future home buyers are protected. If a home is sold without warranty under an exemption, a caveat will be placed on the title of that home, just like the caveats that will be placed on the title of all homes built without warranty going forward. This way, buyers know what they're getting. There's a legal saying, I'm not a lawyer, but buyer beware. Nonetheless, if somebody's can reasonably expect in Alberta to have a warranty on a home they're buying, if it doesn't have one, they need to know, and we're going to make that happen. So when it comes to challenging decisions related to exemptions, definitions, or rental use designations, changes we're making will instate Albertans' ability to make their appeals to the Land and Property Rights Tribunal. Bill 50 will also enable the creation of a homebuyer protections advisory group to help keep Alberta at the forefront of consumer protection and building quality. We're planning on further discussions with Alberta's sector, the housing sector, to inform key regulatory changes to strengthen builder licensing and enhance available dispute resolution. Probably this fall, that's our target. So to sum up, Bill 50 is about making sure local elections are accessible, local governments are operating with an integrity and common sense, and that our housing system works for the people who matter most, everyday Albertans, all our bosses. I look forward to working with my legislature colleagues to debate and pass this legislation in the coming weeks, and to continuing our collaboration with municipal leaders on the regulations and the details that are to follow. We're ensuring Alberta's growth is guided by strong democratic participation, competent and accountable leadership, and secure homes for families. That is the vision behind the 2025 Municipal Affairs Statutes Amendment Act. It's one of strong communities led by responsive local governments ready to meet the future. I'm happy to attempt to answer your questions.
Great. Thank you all for coming. We're now going to take questions from the media, starting with those in the room. So we're going to do one question, one follow-up, and please state your name and your outlet. And we're going to go to Lisa first, because Lisa seems excited.
Thanks, Kevin. Finally. Hey there, Lisa with Global Edmonton. Can you expand the details around the home buyer protection in regards to the home builders? So when you say, you can't just build a home really quickly and that leads to errors and problems with the house, how are you going to ensure that home builders actually kind of follow these rules or don't rush homes or act more on the prevention side as opposed to after the fact?
Well, listen, if someone wants to build their own home, I think most Albertans would find it reasonable that if they're going to build it for themselves, they're probably going to do the best job they can. I think that's reasonable, a reasonable, logical conclusion to draw. However, if they want to sell that home before they're in it for 10 years, which would be the normal period for a new home warranty, then they're going to have to disclose by a caveat on the property that the home is without a warranty. So someone buying it can take a harder look at it if they need to make sure, and get an inspection, whatever it is they need to do, to make sure that the quality and the building standards are there. And we think that's reasonable consumer protection. And the other thing it does is puts independent home builders that build for themselves that may run into some personal situation where they need to sell their home before 10 years, that they're not actually trapped, that there's a way out, but not a free way out. They're still going to have to disclose that there's no warranty on the house, or they're going to have to buy a warranty on the remaining years that add up, that lead to 10 years, so that people that buy the home next have some confidence that they know what they're getting, and they know whether they can count on a warranty purchase for the remaining period of the 10 years, or whether they might need to get their own inspection because the caveat lets them know before they buy the house that there is no warranty on it and it's less than 10 years old, so they can make an informed decision about whether they want to get a detailed inspection done on the home or not.
The next question, when you look at, a lot of these notes, the adjustments to Bill 50, there's a common theme of conflict. It seems like maybe there's a lot of bickering, whether it be with councillors and councils, or when you look at different municipalities and how they, are bordering each other. Has there been some major issues amongst municipalities just in personality conflicts or just disagreements and arguing and just no resolutions? Or
yes.
Can you elaborate on that?
Well, there's been 3 cases where they've gone to court to sort it out, which was never the intention. Listen, when any of us get elected, I guess myself, anybody in the legislature, anybody in the municipality, and I suppose anybody in Ottawa gets elected, go knock on doors and say, I'm going to really behave badly and be a big problem for everybody. People reasonably expect their elected officials to behave in a responsible, mature, helpful way and do their jobs. Human nature is sometimes people don't always meet that standard. The behavior bylaws, if you will, are intended to help police that, though it's always been, I've never made no secret, it's always been my opinion that you shouldn't need policing. If you're elected, you should know how to kind of be an adult. However, it doesn't always work that way. And we've had 3 different municipalities where it's gotten bad enough where they've had to go to court. And in those cases, there's been a judge say that the sanctions imposed upon one or more of the members of council were unreasonable, and the court not. So again, to be clear, most municipalities get along just fine, behave well, and serve their citizens without a whole bunch of interpersonal drama. But there's been more than enough instances of people using the bylaws as weapons, weaponizing them, if you will, and trying to silence people that disagree with them that are on council and one thing and another, that we thought we'd better make it better.
Now to Lisa Johnson.
Yep, I thought you were giving me a question before. I got a little too excited.
And we are it's not going to be government reaching down from on high saying we know what's better. It's going to be like, no, we're going to talk to you folks, including the municipalities that aren't having a problem, and find out how they make it work. Look at the situation and together with them try to draft a new behavior bylaw that municipalities we hope will agree with, because they'll have a hand in creating it, And we hope the other thing that we'll do, as I said in my remarks, is that it'll be refereed by, we hope, a provincially appointed ethics commissioner or integrity commissioner, or some independent body, so that it doesn't unfairly go to the CAO who sorts out, if you and I are on council and we're fighting and the CAO has the rules in your favor, rules in mine, well, there's one vote they might have lost to keep their job. That's not fair. It's not a fair position to put them in, so we're gonna try to fix that too.
Great. Lisa?
Yeah, on that topic as well, I mean, you pointed to these, there's 3 situations where they had to go to court to sort it out. Which example for you illustrates why this change is needed? Why these codes of conduct should just be ripped up and?
Well,
which is
here,
the best example?
listen, it's not the end of the world. Listen, Alberta municipalities operated from 1905 to about 5 years ago without these behavior bylaws, these code of conduct bylaws. So it's not like the world's gonna end. We ran the province successfully, municipalities ran their part of the province successfully for 100 years without them. But then municipalities said, we want them, and they got them. And so, but now with a couple years' experience, we think they needs to be improved based on some of the bad experiences. So we're gonna work with municipalities to try to draft a better set of go-forward plans, try to put that in place, and hopefully it'll work better.
Yeah, like, just to be clear, it would be helpful to kind of show readers a specific example of,
Well,
you
it's
know, an
pretty
instance where
well-
something is being weaponized, like you used the word weaponized.
Google medicine hat. Okay, just for fun,
That's all we needed.
okay?
Thank you.
And I don't wanna pick on any municipality, but that's probably the most publicly, the one that probably got the most attention. So it's not like I'm telling secrets, it's like if you Google it, you'll find lots of material there, okay?
Great, thanks, and I just also wanted to follow up on how many, because it's also gonna stop, it's gonna halt complaints and sanctions that are processes that are underway, right? So how many current complaints or sanctions that are underway do you expect
I
will
don't know,
go by the wayside?
they're all going away. They don't, whatever the number is, they're all going away.
Great. Thank you. And just a reminder, please state your name, your outlet. And
But
we're
here's the
doing
good
one
news,
question, one
even
follow-up.
if you're against that, there's gonna be a general election in October.
Okay. Go ahead, Michelle.
In terms of the codes of conduct, will councils have to repeal them, or does the bill, if passed, just get rid of them all at once?
The provincial legislation will wipe them out.
Wipe them out. Okay.
And I don't mean that in any pejorative way, I just try to be clear with you, they're gone when if the legislation passes and it's proclaimed.
Okay, and I take your point about the codes of conduct being weaponized. I'm wondering though, like with the process you're hoping will go forward, because I think there was, the codes of conduct were in response to a problem, right? But it became a different problem when you put them in place. Will there still be guidelines to govern how councillors govern them, like sort of?
Well, the Municipal
Act.
Government Act includes limitations on what councillors can and cannot do. You can't spend money without it going through the budget, or you're personally liable for it. You can't, there's conflict of interest rules in there, stuff like that. And for severe stuff, we have the criminal code and don't disturb the bees bylaws and all that stuff. So it's not like, listen, municipal councillors are responsible adults doing a responsible job that they should be thanked for. As much as we need to make these changes, I would sure hate to leave the impression that the majority of municipal councillors are not doing their job extremely well, because the vast majority of municipal councils are doing their job very well. As always, you make rules for the exceptions, right? You don't make the speeding rules for someone that drives the speed limit. You make the speeding rules for the people that refuse to drive the speed limit, who is always in the minority, and yet the rules are required. So this is, I would consider it that way. Well, the vast majority of people don't need these rules. There's some that might.
Great. Go ahead, Sean.
Hi, Sean Amato with City News. That was Michelle, Lisa, and Lisa. They didn't identify.
Should I write that down?
No, that's all good. I have to ask you about rural municipalities. The president is not very happy with your government. They say they don't want a municipal police force, or a provincial police force, excuse me. They're also upset about the mature asset strategy. Essentially, they say your government's not listening to them right now. What's going on there? What is your response to that?
Well, no, we work closely with our municipalities and municipal groups, including RMA. And listen, they're not required to be happy with the decisions that we make, but we try to work with them. I know one of the recommendations from the mature asset strategy is to have a working group with RMA and my ministry and energy to sort out some of these things. We've already agreed to that. That's happening. So there's certainly one recommendation there that I think a pretty important one that we've agreed to and we're actioning. So I guess some things I think the president of RMA would probably agree with me that that's a good thing. I've heard her say that to me, but there's obviously other things there that she cares for less, and I support their right to complain about what they don't like.
Politically speaking, would it not be wise for your government to give them what they want? I mean, the power base for the UCP is in rural Alberta with few exceptions. So why aren't they getting what they want?
Well, you might be counseling us to make decisions completely on a political basis, but we try to do the right thing for all Albertans, no matter who they vote for, and try to be fair to all Albertans, no matter who they vote for, and that's what our intention is. So, I'll respectfully decline your advice to make decisions only on a political on a political basis.
All right, go ahead, Shalane.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm just hoping that you can clarify what's going to be replacing, if anything, this eliminated code of conduct. Because you had mentioned, there's still the criminal code, we're expecting them to govern themselves, but you also talked about a potential.
Yeah, well, and that if I had the answer to that, it wouldn't be the result of collaboration with municipalities, which it will be. So the reason I can't answer your question is because the answer hasn't been written yet, and municipalities themselves will help us write that answer.
Okay,
Which I think they prefer. If you ask them, I think they'll tell you they prefer that.
Further to that, as a follow-up, I'm wanting to get some clarity around defining public interest in policy of government. What will go into creating those definitions? As I'm sure you know, we heard from these.
Again, collaboration with municipalities. That's the answer. And listen, when we introduced Bill 20 that includes the phrase public interest, it was a bone of contention for municipalities. We talked to them some on it. We weren't able to come to an agreement or a conclusion on what that looks like, so we passed the legislation and it's in place. But out of a desire to work well with them, we have to, and listen, I'm not a lawyer, but the lawyers tell me the first thing we have to do is give ourselves permission to create a definition of public interest. This legislation is going to do that. Once we've given ourselves permission to create that definition, then we're going to talk to the municipalities and try to figure out what that definition is, and then through regulation add that on. And since we're intending to do it with the consultation and we hope agreement of municipalities, we hope that they'll be more happy about it when they are more included in whatever that turns out to be.
All right, we're gonna head to the phones real quick. So operator, can you please put through the first caller?
George Lee with Fort Macleod Gazette.
Hello, Minister. Thank you very much for this. I'm just wondering if the problem with the codes of conduct was the very structure they were in or in the codes themselves. Like, were there problems, were there fatal flaws within the codes that were being passed on at a local level?
George, that's a great question. And I don't have as great an answer, but the answer I do have is there might be a different answer for every municipality where there's a problem, because municipalities essentially authored their own codes of conduct. And, well, I don't have them in front of me now, but if you and I had all of them in front of us now, we would probably agree that some were better than others. So that might be part of the issue. And the other part of the issue might just be the individual behavior in some rare cases of individual council members that maybe may or may not have followed the highest standard of conduct expected of an elected person. So there might be a different answer for every municipality, George. It's a great question, but because of those variables I've tried to point out to you, that's why I don't have a clear answer, because there might be a slightly different answer for every single municipality.
All right, and a follow-up?
Perfect. And this kind of segues really nicely in with this, although I think you've said that municipalities and their associations are free to disagree with what you do. but is there any fear that any of the stuff we're talking about today will be perceived as overly paternalistic and not respecting municipalities' right to govern themselves?
I think that what I'm announcing today, some municipally elected people will love it, and other people will say it's completely paternalistic and they hate it. So, and there's probably be a majority of opinion somewhere in between those two extremes. But I think for the most part, I'm actually quite proud of what we're bringing forward today, because a very large amount of it is really based on what municipalities themselves have asked for, or expressed or changing what they have expressed dissatisfaction with. Certainly the municipalities that are having big problems, some of them say, boy, you got to do something different with this. Had widespread requests from municipalities to have a provincially appointed something, whatever the title is, ethics commissioner, integrity commissioner, but a provincial separate from the municipality to be the referee of these disputes. The ICFs, the changes are based on real life problems. Some of the things that we're not allowing have happened, where two municipalities have agreed on a set of things and gone to arbitration on issue A. And the only thing we need to settle is issue A, and the arbitrator, for some reason, has introduced issue B and C, and you're also going to do this and do that. And they go, what? So we're saying, look, if they've already agreed, we're not going to allow that agreement you've already got to be unfolded. So that these are like a lot of the changes, I think, and again, believe me, you'll ask and municipalities will tell you. I think the vast majority will agree with the changes on ICS we're making, because they're largely at the request of municipalities. And, but I'm about 100% sure you'll find somebody that won't like it.
Great. Operator, are there any other
There's
callers?
330 municipalities, somebody won't like it.
Operator, are there any other callers on the line?
No.
Okay, that concludes today's press conference. Thank you all for coming, and just as a reminder, information here is under embargo until 3 p.m. Or looks like the minister's keen on taking one more question, so we'll go to Jack.
Oh, I appreciate that. We aim, please. We fail a lot, but we aim.
So the bill, when it proclaims or when it passes, all the current sanctions and complaint processes are going to be killed on the spot there. But the new process hasn't been written yet, and I guess why do that when the new process isn't ready yet?
Great question. Actually, it's risk management on our behalf. And let me say this, the reason these ICF changes we're making today, we would have liked to have made a year and a half ago, but we could not, because some of the disputes over ICFs went to court. And you can't, the courts seem to look dimly upon it when the government changes the rules when it's in front of the court. They usually like the court case to finish and then the government to update the rules. And we don't want to have that risk in any of the disputes that are going on right now with behavior bylaws. If any of the other ones escalate to court, then that would potentially push back our ability to update the legislation. And the only way I think we can really, guarantee is a strong word, the way we can come close to guaranteeing that won't happen is by, to use your words, killing the current disputes that are in place. We're stopping them. We're stopping them dead in their tracks, and they won't exist anymore. That's so we can get our work done. It's not super elegant, but the legal requirements, and our need to get it done in a timely way, I think make that necessary.
A follow-up, Jack?
Actually, yeah. Sorry for a hypothetical question. If we go, we have a municipal ethics commissioner at the provincial level. You don't have this answer, but would it be on the table that the province pay for that, or the municipalities pay for it, or a mixture of both? Like, who would you imagine kind of cover that cost?
Like you said, it's hypothetical. We'll sort it out, and believe me, it'll be public, and you'll report whether you like it or not. But it'll be our best attempt.
Right. That concludes today's press conference. Thank you all for coming. As a reminder, this is under embargo until the minister tables the bill around 3 p.m.
Thank you, everybody.